So we will jump right on in. As we know, in the seasons of all things technology, I just give this proclamation that I surrender to technology today. I am humbly before you, please, act accordingly and appropriately for today. But we will do our best to just navigate. So just want to put that out there. If there's any video clips or anything that starts to lag or is an issue, we'll offer grace and we'll roll with the punches today overall. Also, if there's any dog lovers in the space, we know dogs do what they want to do. So with me working from my home office, if little 7-pound Pomeranian Coco acts up, we're going to offer grace as well today. Okay. So let's get started. So I am Shayne McNichols, and today I am going to lead you all in a discussion around trauma-informed care, compassion from the inside out. I am so glad to be here, to be a part of the West Michigan Counselors Association Conference. And I'm hopeful that as we navigate the presentation today, that you get information that you can glean from, nuggets that you can apply. If there's information you've heard before, that's great. As we know, repetition for the brain is necessary in order for us to really get the concepts. And what I hope too is that even if it's something you've heard before, that you get a different revelation, a different zeal is ignited inside of you in your work, or also a creative approach in addressing a need with the client, but then also in taking care of yourself as well. Okay, so this is just a little bit about me. So I am a Black woman, pronoun she, her. I'm located here in the city of Grand Rapids. I'm a graduate of Grand Valley State University for undergrad and grad school. Earned a degree in social work and have been a licensed master social worker for many years. My licensure is in clinical social work as well as macro work as well. I've been employed in foster care and adoption care and nonprofit in the college setting for 11 years. At this time right now, I am the owner and lead therapist for my own private practice, which is called the Blossom Counseling Center for Personal Growth and Development. So I do that work in a part-time basis, and then full-time I work at Calvin University as a therapist in the counseling center. So that is what I do in the clinical field. And then in addition to that, I love getting out in the community. So I've done public speaking engagements across the country related to various topics, from topics today, trauma-informed care, to race-based issues, to wellness, self-care, etc. And I enjoy collaborating within the community, be it faith-based spaces or nonprofit, for-profit schools, etc. I just like to collaborate and have everybody at the table to see how we can address healing for whatever population that they serve. So I've been blessed to be able to do that work in that way as well. All right. So what I've learned in this work also is the importance of knowing what is going to go down today. Okay, so this is a bit of an agenda. First, we're going to do some psychoeducation of trauma. So those are elements related to the definition and types of trauma, symptoms connected to that, the impact on the brain. There is a case vignette that's involved. So I would love for you all to have a piece of paper or a pen so you're able to really engage in the process. But it is a name that I've swapped out and called Serena. So Serena's Journey. We'll dive into trauma-informed care, process a little bit about your why as far as choosing to be in the helping profession. We'll touch on compassion fatigue, evaluation. We'll do some self-care check-ins, and then also there'll be a slide of recommendations for self-care. And then at the end will be resources, and definitely at the end, there will be space and time for questions. Okay, so I'm going to move through this data so I can ensure that we have at least 5 minutes for that. All right, so here we go. So we're going to jump right into some psychoeducation. And so these are three different definitions of trauma that I really appreciated, okay? There's one that I'll particularly highlight, which is there at the top. So individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, with lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. That's from SAMHSA, and I enjoy that. When I'm working with individuals in private practice and in my career, I've worked with individuals as young as 4 years old. And so if I'm talking to a kid who's between 4 and let's say 10, 12, maybe depending on the cognitive ability, maybe middle school, later high school, I really just say trauma is something that's really bad, sad, or scary that happened that you cannot forget. And as a result of that, you have experiences in your brain, in your body. There's reminders that cause you to feel really scared, like you were back at the scary event before, etc. So I try to find ways to really break it down so that it can be digestible and understandable. Because if I went to a 5-year-old and said, individual trauma results from an event or series of events or set of circumstances experienced by the individual, and did all that, they'll look at me like, huh, what are you talking about? So I'm appreciative of the ability to be able to break down the definition, but then also use literature that can help support that as well. So that's how I approach the definition of trauma overall. Again, these are the three definitions that really stood out for me. And they're ones that I've helped people to capture what's going on well, especially when it talks about the holistic experience once you've had a traumatic experience overall. Okay. So this slide is just showing the different types rather of traumatic experiences that we all can go through. Okay. Everything from a house fire to homelessness to bullying to a car accident, overdosing, and that could be a primary overdose where a person has overdosed and survived, or that can be the secondary overdose where an individual has walked in, let's say, on someone who is in having a visceral reaction from overdosing, or even from witnessing someone who's overdosed and potentially passed away. So I wanted to be sure to highlight that because as we know with trauma, trauma is experienced in a primary and secondary fashion. Okay. So primary, what happens to us, and secondary, what we witness. What that also includes is like a slide here at the bottom on my right hand side, which is an individual outside with a gas mask and a cell phone. Okay, because what we do know about trauma, especially in the 21st century, especially in the years of 2000 and beyond, traumatic situations don't just happen in the moment. There are oftentimes people who get on their phones who want to report, who want to be the first to report, be it news media or just peers or just people in the community to let others know, like, oh my God, I just saw this or that, or I just experienced this or that. So traumatic situations aren't just localized to the actual situation, it goes viral and it goes beyond. And so this is that particular situation at the bottom. And then at the top, that represents a form of abuse. Okay. And that could be, you know, emotional, could be mental, it could be physical, sexual, etc. These are additional forms of trauma as well. In the bottom right hand on my side is a person with a black eye, so that would insinuate abuse. Individuals at the top of that who has gone through a traumatic situation with their home environment. A kid in the middle who potentially had either witnessing a domestic violence situation or experiencing some form of abuse to their person in particular. Up there at the top, left-hand corner is our soldiers, which then also point to just the combat trauma for individuals who have been in that situation. And then on the bottom left, you know, I wanted to be sure to add that as well, because what that is a look at is a lot of what we've been experiencing, especially over the past couple years or so, which is police brutality or race-based trauma. Even as you can see, a person in the back with their cell phones up, again, in engaging more individuals in whatever this traumatic situation is. We see the person's face who is in agony or who is dissatisfied with the situation. So there's been a lot of not only primary traumatic situations that involve police officers, but then also secondary as well, as it is live streamed on our TV screens every single day. So this slide is one that's important to me as well, because oftentimes there's situations where people forget about traumatic grief. And when it comes to traumatic grief, especially in today's age with COVID and pandemics and everything going on like that. We've really had to deal with traumatic grief on various levels. And the thing about traumatic grief is concerned, it's going to have the same types of impact that any other traumatic situation will have. Feeling in your body, in your mind, in your behavior shifts and changes. It doesn't matter if the death of an individual was expected or not. There's still this visceral reaction. There's these cognitive and emotional experiences that are very much traumatic in nature. We've seen a lot of that every single day, especially in the media when it comes to COVID. There has been not only individuals passing with COVID that people have had to contend with because it's a family member or a friend, but then also us who have not seen or experienced anybody pass from COVID, for example, just looking at the news and just seeing the numbers going up every single day, not only in the county but in the state and in the world. Like, oh my God, this is continuing to happen. And so what that's going to incite in us as viewers as well are going to be secondary traumatic reactions, even with anxiety, and even with just increased startle responses, or the desire to seclude, or feeling out of control, in a situation that is out of our control. So I just like to pause here for a bit and highlight traumatic grief as well. Okay. And so these are some statistics that I pulled together related to traumatic experiences for children as well as adults. And when it comes to this particular slide, excuse me, there are just some startling information here that's highlighted that I wanted to jump on for a little bit. Okay, so first and foremost, more than 2/3 of children reported at least one traumatic event by the age of 16. The national average of child abuse and neglect victims in 2015 was 683,000, or 9.2 victims per 1,000 children. So if we know this is content or information or stats from 2015, we know that that experience has gone into the millions, especially now by the time it's 2021. It says here, each year, the number of youth requiring hospital treatments for physical assault related injuries would fill every seat in 9 stadiums. Wow. Lastly, 1 in 5 high school students was bullied at school, and 1 in 6 experienced cyberbullying as well. And we know that to be true as well. With technology, there's more outlets for that lewd and inappropriate and bullying behavior to happen than just the face-to-face. Okay. In addition to that, these are some young adult and adult statistics as well. First and foremost, 60% of adults report experiencing abuse or other difficult family circumstances during their childhood. 7.5 million women aged 15 to 44 have encountered impaired abilities to get pregnant or carry a baby to term, which is also traumatic as well. Direct correlations have happened between childhood traumatic events and risk of adult health problems. And what we know, especially in our experiences, when we're dealing with the lack of safety or neglect or abandonment as children, oftentimes that can translate into being adults that experience that same type of experience as well. And this is from the Two Backpacks book, which will be fleshed out more in detail, the title in my resource slide at the end. Okay. And so, of course, we know trauma has impact on our brains. It has impact physiologically, it has impact physically and emotionally. Okay. Post-traumatic stress disorder has particular symptoms that are connected to that particular diagnosis. For example, these are just a few: intrusive memories, and avoidance. Response, negative changes in thinking and mood, and then also changes in mental and emotional reactions. Okay, so again, this is not the fleshed out content related to PTSD, but it gives us a good idea of just about the different ways that it impacts us as well. And as we know, trauma triggers are anything that reminds us of that particular traumatic situation, be it people, be it places, be it objects, be it sounds, be it smells, be it taste, etc. Anything can potentially be a trigger in a situation. And oftentimes, we know in our field, we'll have an individual that comes in and says, you know what, I know all of my trauma triggers. It's when I see tall individuals, or it's when I see a shirt that has like a lumberjack print, or I see a particular type of car. But oftentimes when they're in counseling, what they realize, like, oh, I have more triggers in addition to that. And now I'm having to contend with and try to understand, oh my God, here's something else that I have to try to work through. But that's okay. If those situations happen in therapy where they figure out additional triggers, because well, guess what? We are the ones that can help them to navigate that so that they can be able to work through those things and change their relationship with that mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. So on this slide, talks a little bit more about the impact of traumatic stress on the brain. So first we have the prefrontal cortex, which is known as the thinking center. And what happens with that, it becomes underactivated, all right? We have the anterior cingulate cortex, also known as the emotional regulation center, and that becomes underactivated as well. So it becomes more difficult to do that affect regulation. So to have an emotional experience and be able to calm oneself down, that is underactivated. And then we have the amygdala, which is the fear center, and that becomes overactivated. So there's a heightened hyper focus and awareness to threats. And then there's also always or oftentimes seeing something that is not an issue be an issue because the fear system is overactivated. And oftentimes that causes the nervous system to be hyperactive and for different synapses to misfire. So it could be a situation that's fine, but an individual might see it as a threat, be it connected to the trauma or not as well. Okay. And so the CBT model, that is one that informs much of my work in addition to other therapeutic models when it comes to helping individuals to be able to process any type of situation, be it trauma, be it depression, anxiety, etc. I enjoy working with the cognitive model. It's one that's easy to explain to clients as well because they see it for what it is, and there's a lot of literature that supports it in ways that they can digest easily. So this is one that I show to clients that I enjoy from therapistaid.com. So first, the cognitive model shows that we have situations, then we have a thought about the situation, so how that situation is interpreted, and then we have emotions or feelings that occur as a result of the thought. And then we have a behavior or an action in response to the emotion. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients and I have a dry erase board on the wall, or I have them draw in their space, if it's virtually, is a triangle. And so the triangle will have a thought at one point, it'll have an emotion at the next point, and then it'll have a behavior. And what I go into in depth as well is another part, which is the consequences as well. So when we stay in a particular mode of thinking or a particular way of feeling or behaving, what are the positive and negative consequences to that? Oftentimes people are coming to us with situations that are negative, so they know if the thinking continues in that particular way, then the consequences will continue to render that. And so thinking about the consequences and wanting to render positive consequences, okay, if we do that, let's lean into more of the cognitive piece as well. So when it comes to psychoeducation, I love the cognitive model too, because the thoughts are oftentimes and feelings and behaviors are an opportunity to normalize what a person is going through, especially as it relates to trauma overall. All right, so the next slide is our opportunity to get started on using this cognitive model, but from an empathetic stance, okay? And so if you have a piece of paper, what I would love you to do is to write situation, to write thought, emotion, and then behavior. We're not going to consequences yet, just yet, unless you feel like the need to. And we're going to take a journey with Serena, but we're going to look at it from her particular shoes. Okay. So I'm not sure of the populations that all of you are working with under the sound of my voice, but what I guarantee more than likely is that every single stage that is happening that we're going to see in Serena's life, you're going to say, yep, I worked with the individual from that particular stage or from a similar particular situation. Okay, because all of us have invisible suitcases, which are experiences or situations that we've gone through in life, some particularly being traumatic. What I will say is, if there's any content related to Serena's journey that impacts you, please feel free to take care of yourself. And that means you can take a break, and walk away for a bit, get a drink of water, take deep breaths, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Please do that, because again, I'm not fully aware of what everybody has gone through. Okay. And so again, we're going through Serena's journey. We're going to do the cognitive model, but I want you to, when you're identifying a situation, think as if you were a Serena. How would she think in that situation? How would she feel in that situation? How would she behave? Okay. So the first part is baby Serena. And so baby Serena was born to a mother who was a drug abuser. When Serena was born, she had a positive meconium screen for illicit drugs. Therefore, there was a heightened startle response. She was removed from her mother's custody and placed in an emergency foster placement. Soon after that, Serena's mother's rights were terminated, and then Serena was adopted by the age of 2. So this particular slide is just some background information. When it comes to the thinking of Serena, that's going to be difficult as a baby, but if you look up maybe closer to the age of 2, there might be some actions, emotions, and thoughts that you can think about that Serena has experienced. Okay, so that's Serena as a baby. So again, putting our feet in an empathetic fashion in Serena's shoes. Early childhood Serena. So she is one of 4 children in the adoptive home, and she's the middle child. She was molested by an adoptive paternal uncle at 5 years of age. The uncle's messages were those related to manipulation. So I'll buy you an ice cream if you stay quiet, or you'll get in trouble if you do tell. She is feeling hopeless, helpless, silenced, and then also misunderstood. She gets to bed, has poor reasoning skills, poor memory, and doesn't make eye contact with others. There's an inability to soothe her. Classic hugs don't help at all. She just really just doesn't want to be bothered at all overall. And there are a lot of angry outbursts in all domains in which she remains. Okay. So if you have a situation here that you want to highlight, be it the paternal uncle's abuse, from that situation, how would Serena think? How would she feel? And then how would she behave? All right. So that's early childhood Serena. All right, next is middle childhood Serena. So she was molested by a girl in school who, on several occasions, the girl threatened to kill her family if she told anyone. Serena is controlling, she's bossy, she acts out in school, she struggles with male teachers in particular, self-interest to cope, and later purposely gets suspended, then expelled due to fighting at the age of 10. Her uncle, who molested her, still comes around. He frequents family functions as well. And she has physical illness with symptoms uh, pertaining to IBS or irritable bowel syndrome as well. Okay, so what situation stands out for you in middle childhood Serena, and what are some thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that would be experienced if you were Serena at this particular stage in her life? Okay, early adolescence Serena. And so Serena has a strict father and a fading relationship with her mother. She is now labeled as the troubled child, not only at school, but then also at home as well. No longer a virgin by the age of 12. She feels guilt. The alternative school attendance is changed because she had to move to a whole new school district. So she does go to alternative schools at this point. She has drug abuse issues because she surrendered to the internal message that she's damaged goods. So, hey, might as well do this too. She has nightmares on a nightly basis, which results in daytime fatigue, eating problems, and then also experiences flashbacks. Okay. Late adolescent and early childhood Serena is pregnant, then miscarries at the age of 16. She has dysfunctional romantic relationships that are oftentimes abusive. She spoke up about the molestation to a close family friend related to her uncle, but she's paranoid about the disclosure. She's mistrusting of adults. She has strained spirituality, low self esteem, suicidal ideation has resurfaced. There's social media bullying that's happening. She found out that her birth parents have died in a house fire, so there's grief. And then also that her adoptive father is now sick with stage 4 prostate cancer. So there's a lot that's swirling in Serena's life at this point. She's processing through the death of parents that she never knew. She's processing the terminal illness of an adoptive father who she's had strained relationships with. So she's navigating a whole lot at this point, just trying to figure out where she fits. And so we say rather that she's experienced some complex trauma or some complex PTSD. And so complex trauma describes both children's exposure to multiple traumatic events, often of an invasive interpersonal nature, and the wide-ranging long-term effects of this exposure. These events are severe and pervasive, such as abuse or profound neglect. And that's according to the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. So this will give some opportunity to just kind of think from the stance that you're in right now in your particular profession or your experience in your life. Many of you may say, oh yeah, I've met a Serena based on the situations that she's gone through, or I've worked with the Serena as well. And so when you think about Serena as an adult, how would you see her to be? What would you think are her thoughts, her emotions, and her behaviors, having dealt with many years of consecutive complex trauma? What do you think her lifestyle would be like at this point? How do you think that the way that she's thinking or behaving impacts her relationship? What about the relationship that she has with her daughter? If she has found a partner or a spouse, what do you feel like that looks like? And again, this is Serena at the point of, let's say, not being treated at this point. So she's just going about life in survival mode all the time. Overactive fear centers going on as well, but she's trying to do something different with her daughter so that she is not the survivor of the same things that she's gone through as well. Okay. So you could jot some notes down about that, where you think Serena will be as an adult and then also as a mother. And so when we think about Serena as an adult and then going through the years, there's a lot of childhood trauma that she's navigating as well. If you were one who thought about her having more traumatic experience as an adult, there's the same thing going on as well. So just a lot of complex trauma and a lot to navigate. So dealing with the need to withdraw, feeling like the things that maybe she's done is unforgivable. Maybe she's shifted blame and there's been a shift where she feels like everything she's been through is her fault. Feeling worthless, possibly inferior, unloved. So let's say a person or a partner comes into her life that does want to love her through what she's been through. And maybe that's difficult because she feels like she's not deserving of that because of that underlying schema. Or she's experiencing corrupt thoughts, etc. So any of these particular things, I enjoy this picture because it's a lot about what we all have talked to clients about, which they have also experienced as well. Just feeling not worthy of life, so here comes a suicidal ideation. And then also feeling like they're not deserving or worthy of community, no matter how much they know they need it. So it could be a bit of a push and a pull. So Serena comes to you, okay? You, like I always say with individuals, even on my private practice, a social media page. Like, we are human too. Like, yes, we're individuals in all our greatness with the letters behind our name and the experiences and the curriculum vitae that's long and the resumes and all that. But at the end of the day, we are still people as well. And so we come into this work with being people dealing with a variety of different emotional experiences ourselves. And so what these pictures do represent is a bit of that, and you can decide what you feel like each picture represents overall. But we do have our own particular experiences, and so we're navigating those as in all of our humanness. But then, because of this work that we've chosen, we know that oftentimes we need to manage that, be it through therapy ourselves or with a healthy community. But when it's time for us to either lights, camera, action in front of a virtual screen or with a client in front of us, we got to put that to the side and be very present for a Serena. So when you're in that particular situation and all your humanness and you're coming to work and Serena is who is on your caseload, how do you respond? What does that look like for you to build what we talk about in our field that's very important, rapport with her? What does that look like from your particular standpoint? Again, we have a Serena who has gone through a lot, who would identify herself as damaged, as was highlighted in previous slide. So how would you respond? What would that look like for you to engage with her? Okay, so this is a time that I want to open up and I would love to hear your voices in this particular context. How would you begin to build rapport with a Serena? Because again, she's very guarded, and this could be at any stage of her process, but what would that look like for you?
I would say from the beginning, it's not going to be easy, but the main focus is probably gaining that trust. Because I probably wouldn't get anywhere with Serena if I don't show consistency. Like, okay, I am going to be here. So she may try to throw me some hoops and hurdles just to see, okay, is she going to leave like everybody else? Is she going to do me wrong? She's being nice to me now, but is she going to switch up? So it's mainly building that trust. So I may not get any insight from her for the first couple of times we meet or however long, but building that trust to where she then feels comfortable enough to open up to me is where I would probably
Yes.
start.
Yes, yes, yes. Very good. Thank you. So, Martisa, it sounds like you know that, yep, she's coming in with a lot going on. So her trust is not going to be heightened at all. So with that understanding, it's going to take time. You know, oftentimes we talk about individuals being an onion and having to kind of take our time to peel back a layer at a time, and a layer at a time, layer at a time. And that's what it's going to look like. And so too, you know, as you're saying, I'm just thinking about individuals who don't trust. We might come in, like the previous slide, having a good morning. We've had our favorite coffee. We're doing great. We're feeling good. We're well rested. And then we try to build that trust and rapport with the Serena, and she totally shuts us down. And she's just like, either non-verbally or verbally, just doesn't say anything to us. And so it's really important in our field, as I know you all know, not to take it personal. Not to take it personal, not to absorb this too much, but still to be the kind, the caring, and consistent professional that you are. So when you're navigating and working with a Serena, it is being mindful of that it's going to take time. And so some of those classic approaches to build rapport aren't going to work because there's a ingrained mistrust or distrust that's there. Okay. Couple more people. What would you do? How would you respond to Serena? What would it look like for you to build some rapport or a connection with her? What would that look like?
So I was just thinking, in terms of the building trust, having a sense of consistency for her. And so
Yes.
just kind of, and you kind of said that at the end as well, Shayne, with just letting her know like you're not going anywhere, that you're someone that is going to be reliable, maintaining the same safe space for her to continue to come back to each time.
Mhm.
So just allowing that to be something very stable and consistent for her to be able to rely on, to build. I think that's part of building the trust. That's such an important piece.
Yes, absolutely, Danny. I appreciate that. And that is the trauma-informed care, is having that consistency. Because what we know about trauma, and we'll, if we think back to the previous slides, if trauma could be scheduled or trauma could be identified on our calendar, then it wouldn't be traumatic because we would know what's coming. So if we knew something traumatic was going to happen at Meyer, then we just wouldn't go to Meyer. Or if we knew somebody was going to hurt or abuse us to a particular level, we just wouldn't talk to that person anymore. So it's something that comes out of nowhere, and we have the responsibility to have to gain our faculties around that. And so with a situation that had no structure, that came out of nowhere, etc., what a person who's been traumatized needs is structure and needs stability. And so what that means is our attitudes when we're working with them. It's showing up at the right time when we said we would. It's being at the place that we said we would be. All that is trauma-informed care, okay? And so absolutely, Danny, that consistency is important, and that safety that comes with that consistency is everything, okay? All right, one more. I'm appreciating you all's comments. So one more, let me hear from you. Anybody else have something to add? All right, bit quiet bunch a little bit right now. So we'll move on. Usually I will select someone, but I'll be nice today. I'll be nice today. So we'll just go for it, okay? So this is an excerpt from a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, which is a really, really good trauma book to read. So it says here, trauma and our responses to it cannot be understood outside the context of human relationships. Whether people have survived an earthquake or have been repeatedly sexually abused, what matters most is how those experiences affect their relationships to their loved ones, to themselves, and to the world. And so what this transitions us into are the 6 principles of trauma-informed care, okay? So with trauma-informed care, the 6 principles include safety, trustworthiness, transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice, and control, culture, historical, and gender issues. And so this was provided by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in 2018. But in addition to this, I found the Trauma Informed Oregon, which is a pretty great organization that leans into trauma informed care a whole lot. So I want to flesh out one in particular that's important. So let's jump down to number 5. So empowerment, voice, and control, but as they say in Oregon, empowerment, voice, and choice. So what the focus should be is to aim to strengthen the client's experiences of choice and recognize that every person's experience is unique and requires an individualized approach, okay? And this builds on what clients, staff, and communities have to offer rather than responding to perceived deficits as well. Okay. Peer support, which Oregon identifies as mutual help as well. These are integral to the organizational and service delivery approach and are understood as a key vehicle for building trust, establishing safety, and also empowerment. Okay. So being able to work together to build that support network once amongst each other. When we're dealing with something as deep as trauma, for example, it's not a one-man show, not a one-woman show. It is something where we will need to work collaboratively and have that peer support in order for us to really get the tools and the tricks and the modalities that are necessary to help an individual heal. And then number 2 is trustworthiness and transparency. And so Organizational operations and decisions are conducted with transparency and the goal of building and maintaining trust among staff, clients, family members of those receiving services. So going back to what was said previously, about trust, building trust not only for the clients, but for the people who are attached to the client as well. And then also as a network as well, building trust amongst each other, working together well. If there's a need that happens, that we follow through and we could trust and we could be transparent about the things that are going on to support a family. One thing that I've realized, especially in my years previously of working with nonprofit, is how it's really important to be very much collaborative in nature. And it's really important for us to all be on the same page. At one point when I did nonprofit, I was a supervisor of a wraparound program for a bit. And so within that, I love the concept of wraparound. I don't know if it's still around at this point, but for people to be able to sit at the table and a mentor, a grandmother, a formal support professional, a therapist, if there was a coach, and we all could sit down and say, what's the best way to support this family according to their mission? So if they want peace in the home, how can we help and support the family to get to that point? How do we help them to get those tools in order for them to do what they need to do? So being aware of the trauma, but also the awareness of intervention, how we can work together to do that. So I really love collaboration. I really love the community support element and the ability to really dive in. It's us against the issue, it's us against the problem. Okay. As we saw on that particular list, safety was first, very much appropriate as well. Okay. It's important that individuals who come in our care and are in front of us are physically safe, psychologically safe, which includes emotionally safe, mentally safe, etc. It's important for us to do that. And a part of that means to be able to have our offices and our environments that and be aware that they don't have anything that could potentially be triggering. Like there's some very general triggering things that we know, don't have that in an office, but then also to let a person know if they don't feel comfortable with a particular statute or they don't feel comfortable with a particular, let's say, poster or something in the office, to make some adjustments so that person is able to feel safe in that space. We don't want anybody, especially who's been through a traumatic situation, or anybody in general, to feel like they can't comfortably come into your space or comfortably sit in their homes and look at you in your particular space and be triggered or traumatized by a situation. Now, if it's something about us that we cannot change that has to do with our person, then of course that would be a situation that we have to refer to someone who's going to be able to help that person manage that so they could get the treatment that they need. But safety is first on all fronts and in all levels. So this is the time that I hope technology was listening to me about my humility and me bowing to it earlier, because we're going to watch a video, okay? And this is a video that I enjoy, and it is from Oprah's 60-minute interview, and it's about trauma-informed care, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that, and we are going to transition to that. If you don't hear the sound, I put share sound, but if you don't hear the sound for some reason or something pops up that's strange for you, feel free to let me know and we will navigate that. It's just taking a little bit of time, but we shall see. Okay. All right, we'll wait and see what happens. If not, if it doesn't come up or something strange happens, I will encourage you all to jot it down anyway. If you put in the YouTube search box, trauma-informed care and Oprah, then this particular video is going to pop up for you, okay? So it's we've been 47 minutes in, so let's see what it's doing and we'll see how it goes. Okay, looks like it's being all right. All right, we'll give it a little bit. If it's still doing the most, we'll move on. Okay.
A correspondent candid with Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah, your story for 60 Minutes this week is about childhood trauma. And there's a lot of new science here about trauma-informed care. For anyone who's dealing with a
Okay.
traumatized child, what can they learn from your story?
Well, I think that this story is it is my hope that our story on trauma-informed care will not just be impactful, but will also be revolutionary. It certainly has caused a revolution in my own life. And I was struck by the story because it reminded me of my own childhood growing up in Milwaukee. It's not lost on me, the irony of being back in the same city, Milwaukee, where I grew up on welfare, poor, a lot of negative experiences, sexual abuse and all of that. What's the difference between a really bad childhood and being able to overcome that, and a traumatic childhood and someone not being able to overcome that?
Really, it boils down to something pretty simple.
And the answer that Dr. Bruce Perry gives you is relationships.
If you also have opportunities to be connected to people in positive ways, that can buffer some of those effects. And as you get older,
I'd like to know more about that.
What he really means is love. He's a scientist. He's not going to use the word love, but it really is about how you are responded to, valued, trusted, and loved by those around you. So I didn't get it from the people who I felt I should have gotten it from. It can be anybody who cares enough about you to ask the question, what happened to you?
Could you trace back in your mind, it was that person who made the
I know
difference?
exactly who did it. I know exactly the moment I started to feel valued, and for me, it was school. I wanted to be a fourth grade teacher because of Mrs. Duncan, and I haven't seen Mrs. Duncan since then, and Mrs. Duncan is here today. Mrs. Duncan! The moment I felt the most value was in my fourth grade class when Mrs. Duncan said to me, I was the one who was chosen to lead the class and whatever it was. So what was I like? I don't really remember. I do remember you.
I remember you were such a fluent reader. Well, if I had a class full of students like Oprah, I would have been floating on air.
Mrs. Duncan instilled in me this sense of believing that I mattered. And that is what every human being is looking for. When you first heard that I had done something in life, did you know that it was me?
Yes, I kept up with you without your being aware of it.
And it was Mrs. Duncan who helped heal you?
For me, yes. It was Mrs. Duncan, and then it was my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Graham. It was school that made me feel a sense of value and connection.
You learned a lot on this story.
Oh, I learned a lot on this story. This story was life-changing for me.
Life-changing, really?
Life-changing. And people use that word rhetorically. Life-changing. It's changed the way I operate in my business, with my people, with my school. 1, 2, 3. You say that the most important question to ask of people who have gone through trauma is not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
yeah.
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 So when you see a church being shot up, or you see, all of the headline making stories of people seemingly gone mad, your first thought is, what happened to that person?
Right.
Right. What has been life changing for me is the question, what happened to you? Not what is wrong with you, but what happened to you? Which is an important question, not just for people who have been so-called traumatized, but it's the most important question you can ask of anyone. I can say that of all the stories I've ever done in my life and all of the experiences I've ever had, I've interviewed, this story has had more impact on me than practically anything I've ever done.
It's changed the way you see everyone?
It's changed the way I see everyone. So when I have an employee who is acting out of line or who is just being a jerk, I don't think, what's wrong with that guy? What's wrong with that girl? What's wrong with that person? I think, I wonder what happened to them. I wonder what happened to them. I wonder what happened that caused them to behave that way. That's what this story did for me.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna click on that. And we'll go on down. So it's not what's wrong with you. Instead, it is what happened to you. I love that. I love that. And so, first and foremost, this is not really Serena, but there is a purpose for this particular picture. Okay, so I just want to say that first and foremost. But overall, I love that video for many reasons. One reason is Miss Duncan was everything I visualized in my head. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I love this. But just that organic and just beautiful moment between her and Oprah, but how Oprah talked about what safety meant to her and having a Miss Duncan, and she also named another teacher that poured into her. And so that's what we do. We talked about trust, we talked about safety, we talked about consistency and all that, but that relationship, Miss Duncan was there every single day that Oprah came to school. Oprah knew that Miss Duncan was going to pour into her positivity. She knew that she would be safe around her. And so the beautiful part about the work that we do and the brain is our brain has what we call neuroplasticity. So it doesn't have to stay stuck in a particular space at all. It takes us to be able to do repetition of positivity within ourselves, but that also works from the outside in when it comes to other individuals as well. What are we pouring into them? What is something that they can glean from us? What are new tools and concepts that we can teach? What are ways that we can praise no matter what the short-term win is or how small the win is? How can we do that to reinforce and to encourage that person to be who they are? So as Serena was going through life, she was just existing as a silhouette. But then she came into your care. She came under the realm of your particular organization or your particular space. And the more that you, your staff, individuals feed her positivity and all the things that are affirming and healthy and helpful for her, you're showing her that she can exist in the world with pride and she can feel this feeling of safety and that she can be someone who contributes to society, that she is not downtrodden, that she is not weak, that she is not unlovable. So everything that we do, no matter what scope of the helping profession or what role that we have, we're able to help a person really to be seen and thus them being able to see themselves and then having the faith and the ability to move forward, okay? So we have very important work in this particular profession. No matter what your why is on why you chose the job or you chose the career that you did, what I'm sure all of us experience is a heart of compassion. We want to see people well. We want to see communities healed. We want to see individuals living the life that they so desire. We want to see generational curses or bondages, depending on the scope of how you see that, or traumatic experiences or connections. We want to see those things broken and for people to live a life that they want to live. So we all are huge hearts of compassion. But where compassion comes, we already know compassion fatigue is there as well, waiting in the wings. So what is compassion fatigue? So overall, it's a state experience by those helping people or animals in distress. It is an extreme state of tension and preoccupation with the suffering of those being helped to the degree that it can create a secondary traumatic stress for the helper. So compassion fatigue is secondary traumatic stress disorder, if you will. So I'll give you all a little bit of homework, and that is to look up the information provided by Patricia Smith. And she does an amazing TEDx talk just about the experience of the compassion fatigue. And she is the founder of the Compassion Fatigue Awareness Project and Healthy Caregiving as well. And I love that website too, because on that website, if you go, so a couple things, the YouTube video, which is called How to Manage Compassion, Fatigue, and Caregivers. But then also, if you go to her particular website, she has a lot of amazing tools or materials so that we can assess and see if we're experiencing a situation of compassion fatigue. And those are called ProQol. PROQOL. Okay. And I love the site too, because you'll see that clearly on the website. It's very clickable, but it's in every language that you can imagine. So she's catching everybody, no matter where they are around the world, so that they can evaluate where they are when it comes to compassion fatigue. So I will encourage you all to take that if you haven't before. And if you have, and it's been, since 2020 that you've taken it, go ahead and take it again so you can really see where your numbers lie. But at that point, that'll help you to move into thinking about, okay, what's going on with me holistically? And what are things that I need to do in order to reduce this compassion fatigue and to eliminate it, but then to also have a preventative measure of how to plan so that if you see compassion fatigue creeping up, which I've experienced myself before, that you can grab it so that you don't go through compassion fatigue like you did before, like I have experienced as well. And so what that moves us into is self-care. So these are general self-care tips, and I'm not going to read all of, but they're basic ones, from checking in with yourself to leaning into therapeutic experiences, to forgiveness of yourself, for getting good sleep or rest, having spiritual connections. A great support system is everything, and that could be a formal or a professional support person, or a natural support, which is a family or a friend member. So really getting the support that you need, but then also caring for yourself well, which also leads me to self-compassion, which is caring for yourself in the same way that you do a Serena or other people as well. Giving yourself that same level of love and support. Kristen Neff, last name spelled Neff, has a website called Compassion Fatigue. Selfcompassion.org, not compassion fatigue, but selfcompassion.org. And there's great exercises. There are audio self-care, self-compassion narratives that you can read. There's audio that you can follow, affirmations, etc. So if you want to build more self-compassion, I say you or your clients, please send them to selfcareandcompassion.org. It's a great site to start. Next are just some resources from websites to also apps that you could put on your phone that can allow you to be very intentional about taking care of yourself. Because we are compassionate individuals, because we have a lot of empathy for our clients, being sure to incorporate self-care in the day is important as well. So apps can help out with that. So in the middle of sessions, taking a break and logging on to Headspace and doing some mindfulness meditation, or logging on to another app called Calm app as well is a great one. Checking out websites such as the Compassion Fatigue Awareness Project, etc., that can give you resources. But anything that you need to take care of you throughout the day, before work, after work, you do what you need to do so you can be your best self. There's individuals, even in this profession, of course, that struggle with that. So oftentimes we have to go through the back door and say, hey, I know you appreciate your clients and you want to be there for them. Well, do it for them if that's where we need to start. Okay, so that is it. I know I didn't leave much time for questions, but if we have some in the next couple of minutes, feel free to ask here. This is also my information. You can reach out to me through email at blossomcounselingcenter@gmail.com, or through social media. If you have questions, if you want to follow for some inspiration, feel free to follow my Instagram as well. And my website will be launching probably in the next couple of weeks or so. Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Danny, if you can help me with that, that would be great. Then we can go from there. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Okay, now I can see you. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, M. Barrows, for coming. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening and choosing to come to this breakout session. I know there was a lot to offer. So I appreciate you all coming in today. Thank you. All
Shayne,
right.
thank you so much. This was
Yes.
fantastic. The
Oh,
information was
thank you,
so
Danny.
relevant and so like easy to just kind of think through some of those things and put it into practice. So
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. And I hope this, again, ignites some more zeal in you, or puts the fire under the feet in the work that you do. I know sometimes when you've done the work for a while, it can get a little bit mundane. You can feel tired. So hopefully these things will help to energize you. Okay. So it's 12:35. I won't keep you all any longer. Thank you again.
All right. Have a good lunch, everyone. We'll see you back at the main session.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.